Hello and welcome to IdeaGen TV, powered by Azure and presented globally by Microsoft. Today we have a great power chat led by Atul Tandon, the CEO of Opportunity International. Atul, welcome.
Thank you, John, and hello, everybody, especially to my friends at IdeaGen, and of course, Happy New Year, John, to you, to George, to Christian, and the whole team. Both delighted and honored to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. And joining me today is Thuy. And Thuy, welcome to the show.
Thank you
for this conversation. Hello.
Well,
Many of you know me, of course. I've been with IdeaGen before on conversations, but especially Thuy and I especially thought this was an important event where Thuy could join me. Thuy is the co-founder and president of the Global Mentor Network, an organization that is really committed to bringing leadership development and mentoring to the ends of the earth, so everybody can get a chance at becoming realizing their own potential and becoming the leader they should be. And, I thought of no better person to join on this conversation as we really talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the people at the bottom of the economic pyramid, on those who are left out and left behind. I know it'd be a great conversation, but Thuy, welcome.
Thank you so much, Atul. It's my pleasure to be here. And I should note that, speaking of leadership, you're a wonderful leader yourself. I've, in fact, interviewed you for the Global Mentor Network, and you're one of our star mentors online. And so it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Thuy. It's really been a privilege for me to be part of the Mentor Network and to see that work. And frankly, more than, for all of us to see the people who are impacted, and how their lives are changed, and the joy that we can bring them now with all the power of technology. You can do it at scale without having to worry about being in person. So I think there are silver linings in these dark clouds that seem to surround us.
Yeah. But certainly, we have to be real too, right? And there's the silver linings, but there also have been major challenges this past year. And I know that you've done so much hard work in this arena, Atul. This has been a tough year for all of us, especially for those who were already vulnerable. As an organization, I know that Opportunity International serves those who live in extreme poverty, as little as $2 a day. And you have seen, Atul, firsthand the ways that the pandemic has devastated communities around the globe. But you've also seen the way that families have demonstrated remarkable dynamic resilience amid these unimaginable challenges. And so I can't wait to dig in with you. So what do you say we get started?
Let's do it. Thank you.
All right. In the New York Times, there was an article on January 2nd where Nicholas Kristof reflected on the way that COVID-19 has impacted families. And he wrote this about families in developing countries. This is a quote: "If you simply look at coronavirus numbers, you might think that poor countries had dodged a bullet. But the indirect effects have been devastating. A pandemic of a coronavirus has been followed by pandemics of hunger, disease, and illiteracy." How has COVID-19 impacted families who are already living in poverty, families like the types that Opportunity International serves?
Thanks, Thuy. And you're right. If for us, COVID-19, so we can talk about the impact, but I think the right word to describe it is a catastrophe. And the catastrophe is economic, it is health, it is social, it is mental. And to give you a little bit of context, globally, if you will, about 60%, 61% for the ILO, International Labor Organization, people live and work in the informal economy, right? People who are in disorganized forms of labor. Those are the people that we at Opportunity principally serve. And about 1.6 billion people are, living in both poverty and informal economy. The estimations are that about 2/3 of them have had loss of livelihood.
My gosh, 2/3.
Two-thirds of them have had loss of livelihood. So if you put the numbers together, 1 out of 2 people in the global working population today have either lost their jobs or have suffered loss in livelihood income.
Wow.
And these people are almost universally people who are already poor. So you've got that very dramatic impact of now less earning capacity, and principally because of lockdowns. Marketplaces are closed, no businesses are closed, there's no job, construction stopped, and so on.
No
Now, in addition to that, it doesn't stop. Their
no
children,
for them, right? Of any
sorry,
sort.
yeah,
No safety net of any sort.
yeah, it isn't. I mean, that's you are now. What do you do?
Yeah.
Compounding that has been the impact on their children. I mean, these are families. Average is about 5 in size. 1 billion children to 1 billion children at the peak of the pandemic were out of school. Right? The majority of the children of the families who we serve, hundreds of millions of them, they don't have any internet access. They don't have food at home. They don't have clean water, right? And so you've got on the children now this. They're not going to school, so the social and the mental impact of their own development. Food at home is scarce, so impact on health, and there's a raging pandemic outside the door and inside the family walls. So you had increase in malnutrition, you had increase in child number of deaths. 10,000 more children dying a day if you're in some extreme situations, what we were noticing. So it's been pretty catastrophic impact in sum total. The estimates are that somewhere between 80 to 115 million more people will become extremely poor this year. Now you have to realize this is the first time since 1990, 30 years, that we will see a net increase in extreme poverty. And at the bottom, that's what breaks my heart.
So, wow. So the first time in 20 decades that we're seeing a net increase, not 20 decades, 20 years that we've seen an increase, or
that is correct. First time actually 30 years.
3 decades here.
Yeah, 3 decades.
Wow. The numbers you have laid out are just so staggering. Put this into context for us, if you will. How do you begin to respond to something like this? Because as you say, these catastrophes are coming from all sides, right? You've got not only the pandemic, but all of the ripple effects from that. You've got sour economies. You've got children out of school. You've got lost learning. You've got the social and emotional and mental health issues that come with that. Where do you start?
We start where we are, where we find ourselves. We wish we could be somewhere else, but we are not. And that's also one of the lessons learned. Opportunity enters its 50th year. I have the great privilege to leading the organization now, not for all 50 years, of course, but in its 50th year. And that's what we find ourselves, is we start where we are. The clients we serve start where we are. And that's what we do. It's when this happened, we, as an organization, we have about 73 partners, 29 countries, collectively thousands of staff, 17 million clients, 12 million savers, average deposit sizes of $41, to give you a sense of who we serve, 7.1 million loan clients, average loan sizes of $350. I mean, we really are. These are people who are living at the bottom of the pyramid. And in addition to that, we had about over 2 million children in schools, upwards of 6,000 schools financed through Opportunity Partners. So our first call, and this is we went into our own lockdowns here in the U.S. If I remember right, on the weekend of the 15th of March, we had gone virtual. By that Wednesday, and within 2 weeks of that, by the end of March, first week of April, had realized this was going to be a catastrophe, and we needed to completely rejigger our plans at that moment in time of what we were doing. So we turned around and launched what I call a survive to thrive strategy. The poor are survivors, they're resilient. We'll talk more about that. But our job, I felt at that time, and we felt as a team, was to stand with them. And very rapidly, we responded to say, all right, the first job is to preserve cash, make sure that we knew this was going to happen. The
Yeah.
markets closed, job losses, preserve cash. We across the board instituted things like a loan moratoria across our entire network,
Mhm.
rapidly increased access to digital access and phone to their little small savings that they have so they could actually access the money without having to walk to the bank branches, improve payment systems. And then, because we are really thought of ourselves as first responders to the economic crisis, and our host and partner governments all agreed to that, we asked our staff, all protective equipment, did our own training, and we went back into the villages and the communities that we serve. I mean, we are not going to stand back and stay back, but we were right there with them, teaching them first of all to tell them what is happening,
Mhm.
and why and how they could protect themselves.
Were
Very rapid.
we doing this digitally because, given the environment, there wasn't any travel really going on international?
No, we have local staff. So our local staff had actually, in most cases, permission to even, to go into villages and communities
Got it.
from the local authorities. I have to tell you, in one case, I think we had permission to go out during the day. This was in, if I remember right, in Uganda, northern Uganda, and one of our staff members, he got involved with a local community gathering, doing some training, overstayed the curfew. The police picked him up and put him into jail for the night.
Oh
I
my!
mean, so,
Dedication, though.
yeah, so what can I tell you? That comes with the territory.
Yeah.
But he wasn't going to give up, and hats off to him. But it all turned out well. So that's what we did. Our response was, all right, let them preserve the cash. And then very rapidly, now what do you do with them in terms of making sure, connecting them to local sources of support, local government sources of support, and then, very rapidly coming alongside.
Mhm.
And I think the most important thing I would say to you, and I'm sure this is true in your life 2 years in mine, and in all our lives, is I think that the biggest hope that we get in times of trouble is when we know that somebody is willing to walk with us. And I can say that's what I think my staff personified is both a shoulder to cry on and a helping hand. So that's how you tackle crisis, and that's what we've been doing now for now close to 10 months is walking with the poor, and making sure they have both the resolve to respond, but then the means to respond.
And
That's been the journey.
It's really not mean so much. We've had conversations about this. You know my background. I came here as a refugee from Vietnam. I lived in a couple of refugee camps in Guam, and then another one at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, in the U.S. before finally resettling in Duluth, Minnesota. Having come from Vietnam, what a stark change, right? But something that you just said really resonated with me in that my family never could have survived without the kindness of strangers. And you guys are doing just that on such a big scale, 29 countries around the world, helping strangers in many cases, in their most dire, needy, darkest moments. And so I really applaud you for that. And what I love about you also is that you're always sunny. Even on super dark days, and when you're talking about the darkest, toughest, harshest conditions, you have an upbeat mindset about it, and I really appreciate it. And so I'm wondering, even in the midst of all the hardship that you discussed, you have a big goal in mind, which is ending extreme poverty. Is this still your goal now, despite the dramatic setbacks that you talked about, and all the pivoting you've had to do, and even progress moving in the wrong direction, right, over the past 3 decades? How do you go back to where things were? How do you get back to that point?
Thuy, that's a great question, and thank you again for your compliments. And you're right. We all, I know you and I both can say from our own lives, we stand here because of the kindness of strangers, of friends and family. I think as I look to where we are, and we're absolutely committed. We actually don't know, our clients don't know to give up, and we don't know to give up. We are going to go ahead. And I'll start right at the beginning comment is, I will take a 30 is to 1 odds any time of the day. After 30 years of progress, continuous progress, reducing extreme poverty, the global community has seen 1 year of setback. I honestly do believe that this year, 2021, we will go back to progress. So it's a 30s to 1 odds, and I'm going to take it. And I think you would too. So it's
I would expect
right.
more
It's quite
optimism.
yes. In fact, if we could put the 2 chapters of 2 books of Your and My Life, we would have it right there. Why we should, believe in the other, and people who nobody knows, who come out and do the work they do. But I think on 3 levels. One, why do I say that? One, and I'll start with our clients, and you want to start with them. We don't want to keep the end in mind, but the person in the mind, and then the end in mind. They are resilient. They are survivors. They don't know how to give up. All right, and how they do that, and I think you will, we all appreciate that is they do that by not only believing in themselves, but in believing in those around them. Right, we are stronger together. The way that the poor survive, if you will, is learning to live on little, but learning to love each other more and more, and believing in each other. Right? And I think that sort of sense of core resilience comes with is one of the learned experiences of poverty that I do believe if we all look in our hearts and souls to all of us, we will find it there. Because we all, if not in our own lifetimes, in the lifetimes of our extended families, have lived through hardship. So it's so that sort of one is this resilience and the yearning to do more and to do better for the human spirit that is completely, you can't quench that. You see that amongst the poor. Secondly is organizations like ours, Opportunity. We are not the only one. There's a number of organizations, a large number doing. We have learned our lessons in 3 decades. We know what works, what doesn't work. We know where it works and how to make it work. So now, the question comes, okay, how do you do more of what you know how to do well? And that's what we're quickly going back to. Thirdly, I have been struck, frankly, even in these dark days, even in these dark times, is the commitment of the global community to making sure that we all work for the common good, for the good of those who are lost, who are being left behind and left out. And I think whether I look at the debt forgiveness programs being put together by the G20, whether I look at the efforts like the COVAX with the vaccine distribution for the poor, whether I look at the efforts of local governments around the world to be able to both not simply to train but to provide for their populations, especially for the working people. And that's happened, even in my own country in India, as an example, when we had to have the informal economy workers leave their workplaces in towns and go back to the villages. There are massive, massive, massive efforts of feeding stations on the churches, temples. I mean, it is among hundreds of thousands of people who are helping each other along the way. Now, in those village communities, I think a tremendous amount of government effort, if you will, opening bank accounts, reaching out, standing with them. So I think to me that the global community's efforts everywhere gives me hope. Those 3 things: clients are resilient, organizations like Opportunity very committed to doing what we are called to do. We will not give up. All of us, we know what to do. And most importantly, I think the global community has a deep commitment to the well-being. So I fully expect that this year we will go back. I'll give you a little story, and I think it comes to mind. Linda, I call her Linda the baker, runs she's one of our clients. Started with sort of 1 oven that we gave her a loan for, under literally standing under a tree and baking bread and selling it in Accra. And in a few years' time, she had grown that little 1 oven shop of hers to 2 factories where she was employing upwards of about 73 people, and had 80 young women like her who were distributing her bread. And she's at that point upwards of, I believe, 12,000 loaves a day from 6 loaves a day.
That's
And
astonishing.
with
Goodness.
tremendous story, right?
Yeah.
And here she is. Lockdowns happen in her hometown in Accra, and she goes from 80 women distributors to 5. She
Hmm.
goes from about 73 workers to 17 overnight. Business is devastated. And what does she do? And I called her and spoke to her, and she said, Atul, God's been good to me. Now it is my time to be good to others. Right? And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I'm going to make sure that all of my workers, whether they're working with me or not, have food on their table. And she literally was, was running her bakery so that the people who had been working with her would not go
Mhm.
hungry. Yeah, and she did that, and now as markets have started opening up, slowly but surely, she's now back to her. Half of her staff is back at work. Half of the distributor women are half at work, and she expects she'll be back at full steam. And I was speaking to her, and she said, "Chula, I think I need to come back to you for a third factory loan, probably by the end of the year." So, Thuy, what can I say?
She's a good businesswoman.
it's,
I'm glad you told that story, Atul, because you have told me about Linda the baker before, but this was pre-pandemic, and I did find myself wondering whatever happened to her when the pandemic hit. So I'm glad you shared that story, and now I feel updated as well on a personal level. I want to go back to something you said earlier about resilience, how in a lot of these developing countries you see a core resilience, but I wonder, the resilience isn't necessarily something that you're always born with. So how do you cultivate resilience? How do you encourage that never give up mindset? How do you do it among your clients, your staff, your partners, and in your own self, Atul?
Thank you, Thuy. I'm going to come back to you for that question as well, because you yourself are very, very resilient. But I think I spoke about my clients. Let me speak about my staff, and it's really fortunate and blessed to work with them. Proud. I'd say that what I find in our staff, in our partner staff around the world, and there's now, if I think if we count the numbers right, close to about 25 to 28,000. I find myself working with very committed people. They're committed to this shared vision to do well for those who are left behind, those who are left out. People at the bottom of the pyramid, and are very, very committed to that vision and that sort of outcome of improving the human condition. Secondly, and I think as I look back at why this works and where it works, I'm reminded of Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great. He talks about three things. He talks about disciplined thinking, disciplined planning, and disciplined actions. I would add a fourth thing to that: disciplined monitoring and evaluation. And I find that when we are at our best, when we are resilient, all those five things are at work. You've got a group of very committed people who are now, have learned and are learning. I will never say we are perfect. Are learning disciplined thinking, disciplined actions, disciplined, if you will, disciplined think and then the disciplined evaluation. And when you put all those things together, is when you start to see, even in the face of insurmountable odds, you will start to see progress. So frankly, I would say to you, even just in the last year, through COVID, the team got together, helped respond, survive to thrive to the crisis across the entire network. Not one of our partner banking systems went down. All branches were open, staff at work. We in fact increased the number of services. Just in Ghana, the country I spoke about, they had a automated voice response system for our clients, one language. Overnight, they went to 5 languages. I don't know how many they are up to now. We tripled our staff in our agricultural finance group. In fact, raised enough funding for 3 years of running that program through COVID-19. We've expanded education finance, I think, into 4 new countries this year. In the middle of COVID, just got last week, 2 big new awards from the U.S. government for work in Zambia and in DRC. So, it is, I think, committed people who have disciplined thinking, disciplined planning, disciplined actions, and are very committed to a data-centric evaluation. that works. And frankly, at that point in time, my job as a leader turns to, okay, how do I help you to celebrate? How do I help you to recognize the good work and bring you back stories of what is working, why it is working? And you asked about the smile, and that's where the joy comes from, to seeing the lives of the people we impact change, but also in the process, frankly, our own hearts and lives are built up. And I'm sure you've seen that too.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of, yeah. You know what? This whole pandemic has. You talked about silver linings earlier. One of the silver linings is that it has forced a lot of people to slow down and think about what's most important in life. And I think you've seen strangers reach out to another and help each other through these tough times, and people reconnecting with old friends, and really focusing once again on their families and on their communities. So I agree with you on that. This has been such a great conversation on resilience, but I also want to end it on hearing from you, Atul, about how you cultivate your own resilience. Because I'm sure it's not, what you do is tough work. I'm sure that not every single day is a walk in the park. Not every single day is. So how do you cultivate your own resilience? What advice would you give to everyone else out there about how to do that in their own
the, Thank you, Thuy. You are the head of the Global Mentor Network, so that's a good question to ask. It's it's what I would say is it's what I learned. Go back to our own conversation right at the beginning of this dialogue. Is I learned in my own personal life, and I would say in yours as well. I learned resilience from, in my case, from my parents, from my mother specifically, against tremendous odds, who invested her life, for the other, in her case, her children. And I learned that from my extended family, the kindness of strangers. And I think that's where the resilience comes from, is investing in, of course, our own lives, but most importantly, investing in the lives of others. And I think that brings to me the deepest of joys and the deepest of satisfactions, and gives the inner strength to be able to carry on. I was thinking about this our conversation and thinking back. And the people you remember in life, the people who and not just you and I, but all of us remember in life, the people who lived for others, who stood for others and with the others, and spent large parts of their lives doing it. Even just in modern times, you can think about Nelson Mandela, you can think about Mother Teresa, you can think about from my own country, Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, and that list is it is a life. Einstein, I believe, said that a life lived is a life when it is lived for the other. And that's where I find resilience in my own life, is believing in my case, that of course God walks with us at all times, but most importantly that we walk with each other. There's an African saying, Thuy, and I'll close with that, is if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with friends. So I'll close with that, and I'll paraphrase Mr. Rogers, who used to say, "Will you be my neighbor?" And I'll close with that. You want to be resilient, Thuy? Will you be my friend?
I will always be your friend, if you promise me the same.
Indeed, likewise, of course. And I think that's where resilience comes from, to being friends with each other and walking through life with each other. So thank you.
And helping to lift each other up. Absolutely. Atul, this has been a really special conversation. Thank you. And thanks to IdeaGen as well for allowing me to be part of this really meaningful, impactful forum.
Thank you, Thuy, and thank you so much to you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you've got a lot of things to do, for making time for us today, and wish you well with the Global Mentor Network. I'm sure we'll hear more about that, both IdeaGen and elsewhere. And thanks to George and Christian and John for giving us this opportunity. So thank you very much, and back to you guys.